Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and this is my week of reading wrap-up where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially what I could read next week based on my mood. I had a bad reading week, but a phenomenal reading day yesterday. So let's talk about them. The very first one was something that was recommended to me by Mel from her channel. It used to be Mel's Booklands Adventures, and now it's Melanie Martin. And she just has exceptional, exquisite taste in so many different things. I know that if she likes it, it'll be hard pressed that I'm not going to like it. And so when she recommended this to me a while ago, I had to order it from the UK, and it's now out in the United States. Just came out, I think, last week. And this is Femina, A New History of the Middle Ages through the women written out of it by Janina Ramirez. This gorgeous hardcover. And she is a historian. She works at Oxford. She's also done stuff with the BBC. And as she was going through and doing research into the Middle Ages, she would see this word, Femina, as an annotation when things were crossed out. And she started seeing it over and over and over again. And what she noticed was a pattern where women were literally removed from the record, the historical record, specifically in the Middle Ages. And so she has found a way to contextualize the way women lived their lives in the Middle Ages that is a fresh and new look based on really starting from there. Where were the women written out of, and then how do we bring them back in? And so because of this, it creates a survey of women's lives in the Middle Ages, which is completely new. It's not something that we have known about before. And she breaks the chapters into themes. So themes like movers and shakers, entrepreneurs, influencers, spies and outlaws, kings and diplomats. Yeah, she even talks about women kings, which I'd never heard of before. So I think this was a case where, yes, some sections spoke to me personally more than others, but overall, it was a really fantastic look at Middle Ages through this wider vista of what was possible and what women actually accomplished and the lives that they actually led, as opposed to what's kind of been sanitized and what they've been stripped out of. So yeah, I think this was great. And it was really good to read for Women's History Month because, hello, women history. We've been here all along as this well shows. And I did do some of this in audio, which was really good. So I recommend the audio as well if that's a way that you enjoy your nonfiction. Then next up, Leo from Leo's Little Book Life and I have been reading Henry James's work. And we are up to this one, The Portrait of a Lady. I mentioned this last week that we were really enjoying this. Isabel Archer is just, what a character. What a fantastic character. And I'm really surprised at my own misconceptions of what I thought Henry James would be like. I thought he'd be difficult. I thought he'd be really kind of challenging to read, but it's so accessible and it's so readable. This is the story of Isabel Archer. We meet her as a young woman whose parents have died, and she's introduced to an aunt that she never really knew because the aunt lived in Europe. There was a disagreement between the aunt and the father, who was her brother-in-law, not her brother. And now that he has passed away, she's come to meet this child to see if she can offer any assistance. And she's impressed with Isabel. She's impressed with Isabel's intelligence and her sharpness and her spirit. Isabel really has an independent spirit, and she looks at things clear-eyed, and she kind of takes on the world without being obnoxious or aggressive, but just through an inner strength. And she's enchanted by this. And this woman is not impressed by very many things, but she is impressed by Isabel. And so she brings her back to Europe and introduces her to her husband and her son. And she meets the family and really starts to develop very close relationships with all of them in different ways. And she also meets a range of men who want to suit her and want to marry her because she's so unique, because she's so smart, because she's also so beautiful. But she wants to see the world. She's young. She still has things to explore. She still has things that she wants to do. And so she really pushes and rebuffs a good number of men who don't really understand what she's doing. One is a lord. One is an American that she was friendly with but doesn't want to marry. And you see time and time again that these men, that she just thinks she's in a friendship, and then they kind of step over that line. She ends up going with her aunt to Florence and then meeting up with one of her aunt's friends who introduces her to a man that she gets entangled with. And at this time, you know, her status is a little different. Some changes have happened. And so what we find is this as an examination of that kind of Victorian notion of the American coming to Europe with new money, and kind of that new money versus old sensibilities, old traditional values, and the independent spirit of the American. And when it takes place in this young woman, and when it's all encapsulated in this young woman, how does she deal with what she's finding? And is she able to hold her own and keep independent, but at the same time live in Europe and fall in love and do all of those types of things that she wants to do? This book was tremendous. It was so, there were times in this book where I gasped out loud. Some of it I saw coming. The foreshadowing was very good, but there were other things that seem obvious now in retrospect, but at the moment were absolutely shocking. And I think Henry James, like Emile Zola, who I'll talk about in a moment, do a phenomenal job at the psychology of a character and getting really deep into what makes a character do things. And so things feel authentic, they make sense. And this was tremendous. This was absolutely tremendous. If you have not read this yet and you are interested in Victorian literature, I really recommend it. It is wonderful. It's wonderful. And I'm so glad that Leo and I are reading Henry James together, that somehow, miraculously, we both kept him untouched until now when we can read him together. So that's been an absolute delight. And another thing about independence and the independent spirit and trying to do right. We have a great book here. This was gifted to me by the publisher. And this is Trespasses, a novel by Louise Kennedy. And this is by Penguin Random House. This is the story of Cushla. And Cushla lives in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. The Troubles were a time in Northern Ireland where there was a lot of partisan fighting between the Protestants and the Catholics. And they also represented Ireland and Irish independence and control from England. Very brutal, very violent, very confusing, a lot of rules, a lot of norms, a lot of ways that people were expected to act and do in an environment where people lived next to each other. And I think this book does a tremendous job at talking about a love story in that setting. We have a young woman who is a professional. She's a teacher at a parochial school. Her family owns a bar, and so she seems to always be doing something. She's either at school with the children or she's at the bar helping out with her family. So she has a little boy that she befriends at her school, and she knows that he is struggling and his family is really struggling. The father was attacked and is in the hospital, and the mother is kind of over her head. And this child she's kind of taken him under her wing and and has decided to try to help in ways that she can. And she becomes more friendly with this family. Then she also has her own family. She lives with her mother, and her mother has problems with alcohol since the death of their father. It's only gotten worse, and they own a family bar. And so she helps her brother, who is the one who's managing and owning it. And it's while she's at the bar that she meets a man who kind of rocks her, takes her breath away, and kind of shakes her foundation. His name is Michael. He's an older man. He's a married man. He is a Protestant. She's Catholic. And he's a lawyer. But they have a meeting of the minds, and they have an instant connection. And it starts a love affair between them. So what we really see here is Kushla navigating a minefield of different experiences that are happening in Northern Ireland. You know, she really wants to help this family, but she's told that she's overstepping. She really wants to be involved with this man, but he's married. She really wants her mother to stop drinking, and she wants to be on her own, but the forces just don't allow that to happen. And so she's really kind of caught. The writing was so good. You were present in every single moment. And you can really tell that Louise Kennedy knows of what she speaks. She grew up in Belfast, and it comes through in the way she tells the story and in the writing. So I'm looking forward to see how this progresses through the prize season, because it's tremendous. Then a book I did on my Kindle, because I couldn't find it anywhere, is another one from Mel. This is something that she posted that she was reading, an arc of that she just loved. And so I looked for it and only found it in Kindle. It's not in my library. I don't know if it's out in the US. This is Smoke and Cracked Mirrors by Karen Charlton. So this is a new series. This author has written other series before. This is a new one, and it centers two best friends who grew up in New York, and it's set in World War II. And what I loved about this is you've got these two young women in their early 20s, and they're both trying to make their way out in the world. They both grew up together, and the main character that we spend most of our time with is Gemma. Gemma is the daughter of a police detective, and her brother is a detective. Her parents have died, and she was living with her husband, but her husband has been reported missing in action and presumed dead. And she had to come back home because she couldn't afford to live on her own in the home with her husband without his income. And so she brings her small savings, and she moves back into her home with her brother. And he is a confirmed bachelor and a police officer, as I mentioned. And she's trying to look for work and figuring out how can she support herself, and what is this new life going to look like? And she's also in the throes of grieving. She and her best friend, Bobby, have always dreamt of being detectives. They had this idea that they loved reading detective stories. So this book has a ton of references of the Golden Age mystery stories, including talk about, and their inspiration is this woman, Maud West. This is a book called The Adventures of Maud West, Lady Detective, Secrets and Lies in the Golden Age of Crime. And it's it's by Susanna Stapleton. And it's the true story of a woman detective. And so I love that they were inspired by this woman. So I'll have to do a fast follow with this book very quickly. They decide that she's going to put her savings into an ad. And so she puts out an ad that says women detectives available for work in the evenings. So they start to get a few requests, and they start taking on these mysteries. Now, Bobby still has a job. So she's working in a department store, and she's kind of catching shoplifters, working undercover there. So kind of akin to what she's always wanted to do with her career. And so a lot of this is falling on Gemma. So she's taking up, but she doesn't want her brother to know because her brother thinks that this is not something that a lady should be doing. And so she starts taking on these cases, and the cases are great. The story between Bobby and Gemma is fantastic. I just think it was smart. It was fun. And it kind of brought to life a little bit of Maisie Dobbs or an Anna Lee Hooper story they're both set in World War II. So it has that kind of serious woman lead that I really enjoy. I really respect how it's positioned. I think this is going to be a great series, and I've already gone ahead and bought the second one. So I'll keep going with this. There's only 2 so far, so I hope it continues on because so if this was the first one, it was a really great start. So that was for March Mystery Madness. And apparently I have caught the bug because as you'll see with what I'm currently reading, I am jumping into a bunch of mysteries right now. But before I go there, let me also mention that I'm continuing my Shirley Hazard Author Spotlight project with a bunch of brilliant people. And we just had our first check-in for The Bay of Noon by Shirley Hazard. So this is the 3rd book that we've read. So we are continuing on. We checked in at the halfway mark this morning, and it's so brilliant. Now, I've read this book before, and I really loved it. And this is one of the reasons I want to continue because I could tell that she was a very skillful, thoughtful, sophisticated writer. Boy, was that concept brought to bear when we started this project because everyone is finding all sorts of things to talk about. So this has been great, and I'll be finishing this up next week. I'm also continuing with Émile Zola. I'm reading His Excellency Eugene Rougon, and this is translated by Brian Nelson. And now I'm all over the place with this series. I thought I was on the 3rd. No, this is not the official 3rd. So I put my order in for the next set. I've been ordering just 3 or 4 at a time from Blackwells in the UK. And so I'll be receiving it soon. So I'm going to go back and read the official 3rd. So if you're following along like I am, don't follow my my order because I'm all over the map. They do feel like they can stand alone, but I want to read them in order. I really it feels, I don't know what it is about me, but I really feel like I want to glean growth and the progression of a story. But meanwhile, this is fantastic. And I love this, the way he sets the scenes. Like I can see Paris. There was an amazing parade and all-day event that was happening in Paris where the emperor's child is getting baptized, infant child is getting baptized. And everyone in Paris is out and the streets and the bridges, and I could see it all in my mind's eye. It just gave me such a great feeling. So I'm enjoying this very much still and continuing on. Then I'm still reading Paris Stories by Mavis Gallant. Still, Paris is not very present yet. I have 11 stories left, and so I'm reading 1 per day. That'll give me a little bit of a buffer, but allow me to finish this month. But yes, the stories are pretty amazing. I'm enjoying. There's a cool remove. They're not they're not lush. They're not very emotional, but they're very intellectual. They're very smart, sophisticated. But yeah, there's a coolness to them, which I definitely respect. So I'm not getting a lot of shocks, but I am getting insights and interesting phrasing and really well-crafted stories. So continuing on with that. Then my library does this thing where it's called Skip the Line. And if you have something on hold that all of a sudden is available for Skip the Line, they'll give it to you for a shortened amount of time. So like a 7-day as opposed to like a 21, 28-day loan. And so this came up in audio. I had bought the book, but I hadn't had a chance to get to it. So when I saw it come up in the library, the audio, I thought, okay, that'll kickstart it for me. So I started listening to it and I was hooked immediately. This is Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. And this is a Book of the Month Club offering for January. Oh, this is so good so far. Completely captivated me. We have AJ, who is a young boy whose poverty and his life in the village and his family circumstances are so bad that he is actually stolen/sold and taken away to become a servant slave for this man. And he doesn't really know what's happening. He's too young, but he has memories of his family. He's a very hard worker. He's very focused. And he's seen what happens when people step out of line. And so he does not do that. Therefore, he is fastidious in what he does. And that allows him to rise through the ranks through the different encounters that he has. He's found himself in New Delhi and working for a man who is a crime boss and involved in all sorts of illicit things. He's actually working closely with his son. Has become the valet, kind of behind the scenes guy for this, the son of a crime boss. This is a revenge tale. It's a lot of class, a lot of poverty, coming of age. So far it's so good. It's so gripping. So I've jumped back in. I'm not going to wait until I think it's like 3 weeks and then I can get my next hold. Spot is up. I can't wait. So I'm going in right now. And this is technically a mystery. I think it is identified as a mystery book. It says crime thriller family saga. So, but it opens with a situation that we have to figure out what happened. So I'm going to call it a mystery for March Mystery Madness. But this is also a tome. I've been reading huge. Yeah, this one has about over 500 pages. I'm also reading another mystery. This is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. This one was the choice for this last month from Book of the Month Club. And this was one of the add-ons. This is completely gripping as well. It's a contemporary story about a woman who is going back to her boarding school now as an adult teacher. She's become a professional podcaster and film producer, and she's going to teach about podcasting and film. But being there has brought up all sorts of things for her about the death of a friend, her roommate, while she was in school, and questions of who did it and was the right person convicted. This is kind of playing with the notion of the morality of entertainment. Crime entertainment, a real true story crime entertainment, and looking at how we as a society approach this. I think it's tremendous. I read The Red Parts by Maggie Nelson. I have it over there somewhere. And it really profoundly impacted me. That was a story of her aunt who was killed and then leveraged in a similar way. To find the killer, they had to turn it into entertainment. And through like a Dateline or that type of, unsolved mystery type of treatment in order to find her killer, and what that did to the family, and how it kind of reopens wounds. So I really like where it's going. I really like what the topic, and the writing is really crisp. This is Rebecca Makkai, and she wrote a book that I liked very much. It was The Great Believers, about a family that dealt with AIDS and the AIDS crisis in the 80s. And she's doing a really good job with this so far. So I'm enjoying it tremendously. So yeah, I've got plenty to keep me occupied in terms of my reading. I would love to know, have you read any of these? What were your thoughts? And that's it for me for now. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk soon. Bye.